Hello and good day to my Elevation Health family. I am Dr. Dave Yachter here in my studio live. I have a wonderful webinar for you today. Just going to share some practical and very applicable tips, and you're going to learn a lot today. We have a short workshop or webinar, really now that's going to zero in on what you can do to apply all of the things that we've been talking about in the past videos, and even this workshop on healing your broken brain. So we're going to jump right into it. We've got a great webinar for you today. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen so I could go ahead and run through all of the slides, and you can actually see what we're going to be covering. So memory loss, dementia, Alzheimer's disease. It's the fastest growing disease in the United States. And there's 1 out of 9 people over the age of 65 that has Alzheimer's, and 1 out of 2 over the age of 85. 500,000 new cases are diagnosed this year in the United States. 1 out of 3 seniors dies with Alzheimer's or dementia, and it kills more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. Every 65 seconds, someone in the United States develops Alzheimer's disease. So, as I spoke about a couple of days ago, that we have genes, not just for Alzheimer's, but cancer, diabetes, heart disease. We have all these genes that we have tendencies toward, which either increase our risk or decrease our risk depending on what we do lifestyle-wise. So whatever genes that you and I may have, which give us a tendency toward dementia or Alzheimer's, we absolutely have some influence over them. And we're going to talk about some of that right now, as far as what can be done to turn the Alzheimer's promoting genes off, and also what can be done to turn the Alzheimer's fighting genes on. So it all depends on what we do. It depends on our lifestyle. It depends on learning, knowledge, education, information, and more important than that, the application of all of that. So first and foremost, we have to know some of these things insidiously or unconsciously that we're not aware of, that are, possibly what we're doing in our medicine chest and our lifestyle. We may not be aware of this, but some of these medications, I have seen many of my patients actually cause and contribute to memory loss, dementia. Some of these medications include anxiety and insomnia medications, steroids, anti-inflammatory medications, pain medications, chemotherapy drugs, and chemotherapy treatments, and also statins, cholesterol drugs. And again, there's been a lot of information that I've shared over the last week or so. Next month in September, it's National Heart Health Awareness Month. We'll be talking more about this as far as cholesterol drugs not protecting against cardiovascular disease. And actually, some studies show it actually doubles the risk of dementia in some cases. Also, some studies show that statin users have had a significant decline in the metabolism of the brain region that declines most significantly in early Alzheimer's disease. So again, it's really important to take note of these things, because sometimes they're part of the recipe as far as why we find ourselves starting to slip in terms of recall, where we put our keys, names, phone numbers, events, and things of that nature. And medications very often are part of that. Sometimes we're not exercising enough, or we think that we're exercising and we're really not doing the right type of exercise, which could be preventing dementia. So a study was done recently, and it showed that an actual increase in the size of the brain, a particular part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is for memory and learning. And they found that that part of the brain actually increased, a gain in size, in elderly individuals who engaged in 20 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise 3 days a week for a year. So this was a year study. And they found that the elderly patients who engaged in this study, if they exercised in moderate intensity aerobic exercise 3 days a week, they experienced an increase in memory function. And so this BDNF that they're talking about, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that's growth hormone for growing new brain cells. And basically, that's what this study outcome demonstrated. Because generally, as we age, this is important. Usually, we'll lose 1 to 2% of the hippocampal neurons in terms of the size. Every single year, we'll lose 1 to 2%. But the exercise intervention group in this study showed that the aerobic exercise actually led to a growth of the hippocampus. It actually increased. And the people in the control group who did not do the aerobic exercise, what they found when they just did stretching and toning and they didn't do any aerobic exercise, their hippocampus, that part of the brain actually decreased in size over the same time. So it's not to say that there's no benefit in stretching, toning, yoga, and things of that nature. There is benefit. But in this particular study, what had the greatest impact on growing new brain cells, increase in memory over that year period, was the aerobic exercise, moderate intensity, at least 3 days a week. So that's important to know. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here that actually will accelerate significantly brain degeneration and really accelerate dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's disease. And so I want to talk about, very briefly, I want to talk about toxins, sugar, bad fats, because at a cellular level, these will wreak havoc. So, trans fats, hydrogenated oils, vegetable oils. So I've referenced some of these in the previous video last week, but I want to cover it just a little more deeply as per our workshop here in some of the slides. So these bad fats that we're having are highly inflammatory to the cells in your body and your brain. And if you're suffering from fatigue, weight gain, weight loss resistance, you've got sinus trouble, headaches, you're just having way too many bad days and not enough good days, this really could be at the root of your issues, or a good part of it. So these partially hydrogenated vegetable oils and hydrogenated oils, we have to really keep a good eye out for. They're, kind of obvious in a lot of these things, like, cookies and donuts and croissants and things of that nature, and yodels, devil dogs, all the stuff that we have cravings for, if you do. But less obvious to some people are these so-called healthy margarines, which are, we've been told to use margarine and country crock to prevent heart disease, but are very highly inflammatory. And when you inflame the arteries of the heart and anywhere else in your body, you're actually increasing the risk of heart disease. And that's what these bad fats do. Also, just simply reading labels will tell you exactly what the effect is going to be internally. Now, you may not feel it, but inside, again, it's basically fanning the flames of the fire that's going on at the surface of the cell. It's in the popcorn, it's in the fast food. Even if you go out to dinner and they do a stir fry, if they're using some of these oils, vegetable oil, if they're using vegetable oil and they do a stir fry, even if you're having meat and vegetables, we may think that we're doing good. But at the same time, these oils are very, very harmful, causing inflammation in your body and your brain. So we need to, have less of the bad fats and have more of the good fats. So what are some of the good fats? Extra virgin olive oil, again, anti-inflammatory. Avocados and avocado oil, coconut oil. It's good to cook in this stuff, especially the coconut oil. Because oftentimes you're like, well, what else do I cook? And if I can't, use my vegetable oil or my Crisco, you can cook in extra virgin olive oil, but it has to be on low heat. Otherwise, you denature it and turn it into a bad fat. You can cook in avocado oil, same thing. Coconut oil will take high heat. You can actually fry things in that. You can fry fish, you can fry chicken, raw nut seeds, oils, these are great things to especially just be snacking on. Walnuts, avocados. So just the nuts that are very high in fat, you should not have any guilt over eating, because good fats do not make you fat. Good fats actually help you burn fat. If you don't have an allergy to dairy, Real butter like Kerrygold will be very healthy for your body and also in particular your brain. Real butter has something called arachidonic acid, which is a necessary nutrient for proper brain function. So that's really important. You can cook in that, and there's a real benefit to using organic grass-fed butter. And when we look at fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and things of that nature, the good fats in that, again, are healthy for our body and our brain, and they are anti-inflammatory. So for purposes of what we're discussing right now, if you look at the picture of everything down there, these are all important to help get the bad stuff out and get more good stuff in. So what are some of the most common memory complaints? We forget names, we forget faces, you forget where you put things. Where did I put my keys? Where did I put my phone? You forget an appointment, you forget a word. It's just like on the tip of your tongue. It's right there. You know what you want to say, but your recall just isn't there. So these are common signs and symptoms of memory problems, memory complaints, which could be the beginning of dementia, and which is the preliminary stage for Alzheimer's disease. And we're going to talk about a little bit more what causes that besides the bad fats. But one of the things that I wanted to share with you, a study that directly impacts that and helps improve that, is fish oil capsules. So in this one particular study, they showed that healthy people with memory complaints who took EPA and DHA capsules for 6 months had almost double the reduction in errors on tests measuring learning and memory performance versus those who took a placebo. So this is real stuff, guys. I mean, the research has been out for a long time. The benefits of fish oil capsules, again, a good quality nutrient, which your body can actually absorb. And not all supplements are like that. But the ones that your body has good absorbability with and can utilize, it'll have a positive effect on lowering your blood pressure, preventing arrhythmia, lowering your triglycerides, prevents blood clots, fights cancer. Studies show that it prevents depression, and it helps to reduce inflammation at the cells, at the cellular level in your body. And it also helps to ward off mental decline. For purposes of this webinar, that's really important. So we talked about bad fats causing inflammation, leading to dementia and Alzheimer's, cognitive impairments. So the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease put out a study, and they showed that older people who load up their plates with carbohydrates have nearly 4 times the risk of developing cognitive impairment. What's cognitive impairment? That is when it leaves your brain impaired after you eat. There's sometimes after you eat, or it could be more of a permanent condition where simple tasks like having a conversation, making sure that an individual can track through their conversation. And, when we start losing normal functions in terms of how to navigate through life, as simple as, getting dressed or driving or, knowing where you're at, knowing how to get home, when we start losing these normal functions, we're moving into the realm of cognitive impairment, dementia, and ultimately Alzheimer's disease. So there's a progression, and it usually begins with cognitive impairment, which this study showed can be brought on, can be provoked by loading up your plates with way too many carbohydrates. Wow, isn't that interesting? And look what the picture shows: breads, pasta, rice, cereal, things of that nature that, all seemingly look good and have some sort of nutritional benefit. But the bottom line is that when it elevates, when it breaks down, it turns to sugar. If your body has to use insulin and make insulin and drive insulin to get that sugar into the cell, what follows that eventually is your A1C. And so this study from the Journal of Neurology showed that the higher your A1C, the smaller your brain. So I'll let that sink in for a little bit. So let's read through this. It said researchers looked at MRIs to determine which lab tests correlated best with brain atrophy. That means brain shrinkage. And they found that hemoglobin A1C demonstrated the most powerful relationship. So what is your A1C? Is your A1C 6 or 6.5, 7, 9? I don't know, wherever you're at. Are you okay with your brain shrinking all the while that number stays in that range? Or is there a concern there? Because if there's a concern, that's what this is all about, giving you solutions on how to get that into the normal range and prevent, cognitive impairment, dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss. Okay, so if your A1C is high, this is what they're showing when compared to the degree of brain tissue loss with those individuals who had the lowest A1C versus those having the highest A1C, over 5.9. The brain loss in those individuals with the highest A1C was almost doubled during that 6-year period. So this is significant. So we need to kill the sugars before they kill us. Insulin resistance causes something called type 2 diabetes, and type 2 diabetes, if your A1C is elevated long enough, will cause Alzheimer's disease. So now many neurologists and progressive neurology scholars and researchers they're basically just call Alzheimer's disease type 3 diabetes. Dementia and Alzheimer's disease is type 3 diabetes because of the intimate relationship between the sugars in the A1C and the brain shrinkage. So take a look at all the pictures here and see what's causing that. Your cereals, your high fructose corn syrup that's in the soft drinks, it's in tomato ketchup, that's in spaghetti sauce, it's in fruit juices, high fructose corn syrup. I challenge you to open up your pantry and look at the labels, and I'd be willing to say probably at least 70 to 75% of everything that's in your pantry has some form of high fructose corn, or at least a laboratory derivative of that. There are so many ingredients that we can't even pronounce on some of these labels that it becomes somewhat of a comedy. And so as a general rule, I like to tell my patients, if it was made in a lab, it probably doesn't belong in your body. If it was made by God, if it grows out of the ground or off the vine on a tree, you're probably safe. Food by God belongs in the body by God. Very simple thing to remember, right? So when we look at these things, like that, everything that's on the screen there in front of you, take a look and take inventory, and let's try to make the transition here. So if you look on the left, you see everything that contributes to brain shrinkage, brain loss, moving into cognitive decline, dementia, and eventually Alzheimer's disease. All of those carbohydrates, and many of them are, whole grain. Again, there is benefit to that if you have it every once in a blue moon. But if you've got a high A1C, if you've got blood pressure issues, if you're overweight, if you've got a condition or multiple conditions that you need to get under control, you shouldn't be having any of that for a while until you get some healing going, and then you start to reintroduce these sparingly. So if you look on the left, you want to transition to the right, and what do you see on the right? Well, you don't see any of those carbohydrates. You see carbohydrates getting into your body in the form of fruits and vegetables, low sugar fruits and vegetables. And then you see good fats, good healthy fats like fish, nuts, grass-fed meats, whether it be red meat, whether it be organic chicken, organic free-range eggs, and things of that nature. And you can call that a paleo diet. That may be a form of that. But again, you're basically looking at proteins, good fats, fruits, and vegetables. And this is how we start making our way to building a healthier body and a healthier brain. Another important supplement as far as being supportive for this is probiotics. That feeling of wellness, that feeling of feeling that you're healthy and you're happy comes from a neurotransmitter called serotonin. And that serotonin, 90% of that serotonin is in your gut. About 80% of your immune system comes from your gut. And I can tell you that bad fats, sugars, the toxins, it all destroys the gut. It causes leaky gut syndrome. It destroys the the normal flora in the gut, the microbiome, which is very, very important for not just for normal brain function, but for normal overall health. So if you're not taking a probiotic, you're probably missing a big, important foundational component as far as, you know, your recipe for not just rebuilding, but maintaining health. So it reduces the risk of colds, flus, COVID, cancer. So it's so important to have a probiotic in your regiment. And as I always say, you know, these supplements, if you're serious about your health, it's not a recommendation. It's an absolute requirement that you're on these nutrients and you're getting these nutrients so your body can, you know, use it and do what it needs to do to adapt and thrive in today's environment, which is brutal on our bodies, not to mention our brain and our mental health. Ultraplex curcumin is a powerful natural anti-inflammatory coming from the Indian spice turmeric, and it's got the most evidence-based literature backing it as an anti-inflammatory. Not just that, but cancer support also. We know from studies that it actually attacks the amyloid plaques, which is one of the main causative factors that they find that causes stiffness, the rigidity, and the shrinkage in Alzheimer's patients and their brains. So it attacks that directly. But I take a couple of these every day as a preventative. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It's not just good for your, you know, especially if you have joint pains, knee pains, hip pains, foot pains, arthritic pains, shoulder pains. It's an anti-inflammatory and it's natural. And it's one of the healthiest things that you can have in your daily regimen. So I talked about bad fats. I talked about sugars. And the last thing we're going to talk about here as far as destroying the cells in your body and your brain are the toxins. And there's three main culprits. The first one is pesticides, namely glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. And they found that when they started dumping copious amounts on this, really the study that they began in the late 90s, they carried the study out for 20 years. And they found that as the application of glyphosate increased, particularly in soy and corn, so did the number of deaths from senile dementia. It was almost 100% correlation in this study. So corn and soy today, basically, it's in our food chain in almost everything, from fast foods to what they feed the chickens, to what they feed the fish, to what they feed the cows. So we're getting it one way or another. One of the most important things that you could do is make sure that you're buying organic, non-GMO. And so that will help to offset that. Most of us have some level from the past in stored cells. Another thing that gets stored up in our cells, and particularly our bone, is lead. So we got pesticides, and then we got these metals that accumulate in our body starting from birth. It actually passes through the umbilical cord, and they've done studies that show nearly all babies have some level of toxicity that come through the cord from the mom. And so where does the lead come from? Well, it comes from sometimes the homes that we live in that have been painted over. You know, these older homes used to be lead in the gasoline. There was lead in the pipes. There's lead in our water sources. And, you know, sometimes people say, nah, there's no lead. Yes, you'd be surprised. Of cities across the country are higher lead levels than Flint, Michigan, that have been tested recently. So there's always minute amounts of these things. And as it goes into our body for a period of time, it becomes problematic. So all the lead usually gets stored in our bones, and your body releases the lead when you go through hormonal changes, puberty, pregnancy, when you get older, menopause, and then even beyond that. And when the lead gets released from the bones, it causes high blood pressure. It's one of the causes for medication-resistant high blood pressure, heart disease, Alzheimer's, weight gain, weight loss resistance. One of the studies recently that I've shared in our workshops is that they found lead in, there was 33 lipsticks in the study, and some of these cosmetics, 20 out of the 33 lipsticks that they tested had high levels of lead. So remember, your skin, anything that you put on your body, it goes through, and your skin is an organ and it gets absorbed. And so this is part of the problem. Again, it's cumulative, it goes in and it stays in our body for years and decades and affects not only the cells, but the brain also. And from lead, one of the other metals that's important is mercury. And we're talking about either not just thimerosal from the flu shots and the childhood vaccinations as a preservative they've used, but also amalgam fillings, which is 50% metallic mercury. And the more amalgam fillings that you have in your mouth, the more mercury you're going to have in your organs, including your brain, kidneys, heart, liver also. But I want to share with you this video, which shows how mercury vapors come off of a tooth. And so if you have any sort of fillings, then this should be a concern for you.
Is mercury vapor coming off a 25-year-old silver amalgam filling in an extracted tooth. The background is a phosphorescent screen. The mercury vapor absorbs the fluorescent light, and you can see it as a shadow on the screen. This is mercury coming off a filling that was dipped in water that's the same temperature as the human body. This is a filling that was rubbed with a pencil eraser for just a few seconds. Like going to the hygienist and having her clean your teeth. These are not small amounts of mercury. If you can see it, it's more than 1,000 times higher than the Environmental Protection Agency will allow for the air that we breathe. What about the last time you went to the dentist and they drilled on your tooth? Here is the mercury vapor every time you raise the temperature to 110 degrees with hot coffee or warm water, or even chewed on it. Mercury comes off fillings every time you stimulate them, and that stimulation causes the mercury to continue to leak out of the fillings for an hour and a half at a minimum.
So obviously this is important because that mercury is leaching into this and into, if it's going in, if it's not coming out, then how do we approach that? Is there anything that we can do proactively to address that? Because that is one of the things that eventually leads to cognitive decline. Studies are showing now dementia is affecting people younger and younger. As, from vaccines, we all have vaccines as we're younger. Some of these vaccine schedules, the vast majority of them now have as many as 8 vaccines given to kids by the time they're 5 years old. And so this builds up, and then we get flu shots. So it's all cumulative. So this is it. It's the world we live in. According to the EPA, our indoor environment is 2 to 5 times more toxic than our outdoor environment. So when you look at that, take heed. We have biotoxins like mold. We've got prescription drugs, which we have to take, some of us, which are, there's some level of toxicity there. Sodium oral sulfate in the sudsing agents that we use for toothpaste, soap, shampoo, aluminum in some of the deodorants, and formaldehyde in our mattresses and our pillows, and all of these things. So, it's like the cells, they're buckets basically, and all of the toxins are filling up in our cells, and it's like a bucket that begins to overflow. When those cells start to overflow from those toxins, you have more coming in, more toxins coming in, and your body can actually get out by itself. It's overloaded, and that's when we start having these symptoms of toxicity. You could have high or low blood pressure because of toxicity, digestive problems, weight loss resistance, dizziness is a symptom of toxicity, inability to handle stress, fatigue, tiredness, brain fog, headache, all symptoms of toxicity, hormone dysregulation, trouble sleeping, insomnia, depression, mood changes, all symptoms of toxicity, temperature dysregulation, muscle and joint pains, all symptoms of toxicity, not just in our body, but our brain. So the question is your bucket overflowing? This is what it looks like as far as what happens at a cellular level. You could see the red line basically outlines the cell membrane. That cell membrane is permeable, which means, vitamin A, vitamin D, hormones like insulin, estrogen, testosterone. And the way that they find their way in is they have receptors on the surface of the cell. And that's what transports these constituents into the cell. And that's how the cell works. So you got to get the good stuff in. And then, you have the cellular function. And then you have wastes that are excreted by the energy produced inside these cells. And then that bad stuff has to get out. So your cells have to excrete the waste from the production of energy inside the cell. And what happens is, we have like I said, we have the toxins, we have the sugar, we have the bad fats, all driving inflammation at the surface of the cell, which causes inflammation. And then all of a sudden, the membrane is not so permeable anymore. Now, all of a sudden, the good stuff cannot get in and the bad stuff cannot get out. And so now you have these toxins, you have nutritional deficiencies at an internal level. You have dysfunction in terms of hormonal dysregulation because of the lack of communication from the outer cell wall to the inner cellular environment. And then now also you have toxicity in the internal ecosystem or an internal environment inside that cell, which affects the DNA and turns on those disease-causing genes, which turns on bad genes. It turns on the Alzheimer's genes. If you have the APOE gene, it's going to turn on the Alzheimer's promoting genes. It may turn on weight gain genes. It may turn on diabetes genes. It may turn on heart disease genes. And this can all be triggered by toxicity. It can all be triggered from this inflammatory condition of the lifestyle that we're bringing into and causing all of these effects into this picture here. So hopefully that makes sense so you could see that. And what is the solution? Well, you have to heal up these cells. You have to heal up these cells, and it has to be done intentionally. There has to be an approach to this which actually undoes all of the years and many, many decades of damage of not just at the cellular level, but where all of the toxins have accumulated. So the first phase to doing this properly and really at a deep, deep cellular level is the preparation phase. You have to strengthen all the downstream and cellular toxicity pathways to getting the toxins out. So you have to prepare the detox pathways to support the toxin removal. If you just start detoxing and your body's not ready for it, it hasn't healed up to some degree to where functionally it can support the toxins getting out, then it's not going to be as effective as it should be. And then the second phase is the body phase. That's where you're removing the toxins at the cellular level and you're setting up a concentration gradient to move and mobilize these toxins from the deeper tissues like the brain. And then the third phase is where you get to the deeper levels of the accumulated neurotoxins that lead to the most symptoms. Most of those symptoms are happening at a brain level. That's where it's affecting your pituitary gland. And then from there, it affects basically all of your hormones, neurotransmitters. There's a cascade of biochemical problems which lead to all of these symptoms like fatigue, depression. And this is where the magic happens. When you start cleaning that up and you start regaining normal function of your brain, you start having good days, many, 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 many more good days. You don't need as much sleep. You wake up earlier, you feel more refreshed. You don't wake up with headaches. Your joints don't ache. A whole new level of health starts to become experienced when you start cleaning up your body at this level. So the 3 phases of true cellular detox is basically a 90-day program. And this is very, very specific in terms of how this is approached. We've utilized this technology for probably about 4 years now. I did detox programs many, many years prior to this. There is nothing like this. There are more general approaches to detoxing, but nothing at the level of where it actually cleans out the cells and your brain like this program does. Not even close. And I've done this several times myself, so I can testify to this. And we have many patients that have gone through this program. It's a 90-day program. So the first phase is the prep phase. All the supplements are prepackaged in the prep phase. You take out one package. You take there's a few pills in the, and they're all supplements. There's no pharmaceuticals. It doesn't interact with medications. It just breaks up the supplements. So you have half the dosage in the morning and half the dosage in the evening. And you do that for 30 days. And then you sit down with Deborah and she retests you and you look at your toxicity levels. Objectively, you see the evidence of your toxicity level coming down, and then you begin your body phase. And again, this is where there's the cellular gradient is created inside the cell, to where there's utilizing the momentum of pushing the toxins out of the cells and getting them out into those detox pathways. So with this, there's actually supplements that you take in the morning, the evening, and at night. And this is the part where, you know, all the toxins get mobilized into your colon, and then you have to have specific binders to take it out of your colon so that it doesn't get absorbed and go back into your body. Because that's what happens if you don't have the right binding agents to take those toxins out of your colon and out of your body. Then it's called auto reintoxication. It goes right back into your liver and it gets swept right up into your body. So after you go through the body phase, that's about 30 days, you get retested. And then finally, your last 30 days, you do the brain phase. And there are packets that you take in the morning, then there are packets that you take in the evening. And again, these are specific dosages. It's very, very easy, user-friendly. They're pre-packaged. So you don't have to count out your supplements. You just take it out, you open the bag, you can take it to work with you, you can take it on the run, you can take it at home. It really doesn't matter. You can take it with water, you can take it with meals. It's super simple, and everything's already planned out for you. So when you go through this 90-day process, you not only feel, you know, a level of mental clarity and energy like you probably haven't had in years, but you also see the difference in the testing. So the testing doesn't lie. We don't guess, we test. We do this with your spinal health, and we also do this with your brain health. And how we know your level of toxicity specifically is by doing two tests. The first test we do is a visual test, the contrast sensitivity test, because when you have a certain level of toxicity, it affects the optic nerve and it'll affect your vision. And there's a special test that Deborah does with you. If you see the picture on the right, you can see there are specific lines that you have to discern. And you know, when your optic nerve is affected, you're not able to read the lines on this test. So there's a visual test that you take, and then there's a meta-oxy test, which is a urine test. And basically it's a sample, and we mix it with the urine, with the reagent, and we look at with the color. And on a color chart, you could see your level of toxicity. So this is the place to start to see toxicity. The question is not, are you toxic? Everybody's toxic. The question really is, how toxic are you? And how much of a part of your health picture is this right now? So like I said, if you've got these types of symptoms, you know, weight loss resistance, brain fog, fatigue, depression, headaches, you know, so a lot of the symptoms that we talked about today are very, very common. And a lot of people try to treat them with different supplements or medications, but until you correct the cause, the source and the root, and get these toxicity out of the body, you're never really getting down to the root of the problem. So my recommendation is, if you're serious about your health and you want to get specific, this is what you want to do. Now, if you want a general approach and you just want to support your liver and boost something called phase 2 liver detoxification, something your body does by itself already in a general, gentle, low-level detoxification approach, then I would recommend the Ultraplex Complete Clean. It has a multivitamin spectrum in it, gut support health, and something called N-acetylcysteine, which will help your body make glutathione, which is the master antioxidant, which helps to recycle all the other antioxidants, which again supports detoxification in your body. So again, this is something more general, but it's better than nothing. And I actually take this every day anyway, because it's got 26 grams of protein, very low sugar, and it's a perfect breakfast supplement. It's a meal replacement, and I'll just have some berries and almond butter with it. Very, very tasty, very delicious. It comes with chocolate or vanilla. And the last thing I want to share with you as far as your brain, this you'll find interesting.
Jim McMahon is 56 years old. He now spends most of his time in his Scottsdale, Arizona home, where the dry desert air best suits his long list of post-football aches and pains.
This is my daily routine. What am I doing? What am I looking for?
But what the climate can't combat are the symptoms associated with brain trauma McMahon suffered as a player.
Bad headaches, pressure on my skull. I couldn't see very well. I couldn't talk very well. All I wanted to do was lay down because my head was just constantly pounding. The pain had gotten so bad where if I had had a gun, I wouldn't have been here. And these two doctors from New York called me and said, hey, we think we can help you. We think we know what's going on. I said, let's do it.
Jim was diagnosed with early onset dementia. He had been complaining about a brain fog, as he described it, as well as he described it, a headache where he felt like ice picking on both sides of his brain.
While most concussion studies are focused on the brain, McMahon's team traces the effects of CTE directly to the upper spine, having found that neck misalignment can block the flow of spinal fluid and pool toxic proteins directly onto the brain.
Spinal fluid is white. That's the spinal cord. This is the spinal column. What you're seeing is a narrowing of the opening where the spinal fluid is supposed to come through.
Most times when you're having head problems, that's all they look at is the head. These guys were smart enough to at least look below the head at the neck and see if there was a problem somewhere, and they found my problem. They're not going to be able to reverse the damage. Like I said, that stuff was sitting in there for 20 years. So how much it ate away at my brain, I don't know.
Using detailed images captured by the MRI scans, McMahon regularly receives targeted adjustments, clearing the blockage and restoring the flow of spinal fluid.
This instrument is going to generate a gentle mechanical tapping that is just lightly going to put those bones right back into normal position. Okay, I'm going to sit back up.
First time they did this procedure, within 2 minutes, it was like the toilet flushed. I could feel this stuff actually leaving my brain. My eyes cleared up, my speech cleared up.
The left is before, the right is after. So you see how much there is there? See how there's less in here? Instead of all this white stuff being in there, you're seeing more brain tissue than fluid. So it's already started to brain. Over the next several days, it'll improve more.
What damage it's done, it's done. I can't reverse that. But what these guys do for me, they keep me from having these bad pains, having these suicidal thoughts, having me function fairly normally while I can.
Because a bone is out of alignment, putting pressure on your brainstem or your spinal cord in the upper cervical area, it causes brain shrinkage because you're not getting the cerebral spinal fluid where it's supposed to be. It's starving the brain of its normal function. So that's what this study showed. This was aired on ESPN not too long ago. You have to have clear neurological function. They showed that in the past of the atlas and axis, C1 and C2 were associated with abnormal function of the pituitary, which resulted in abnormal secretions. So of course we know that in the neck area, that's the area that controls the pituitary gland, the blood supply to the brain. Problems in this area, when you have subluxation, if the bone shifts out of alignments, it causes headaches, nervousness, it can cause insomnia, head colds, it can lower your immune system, high blood pressure, nervousness, nervous breakdowns, amnesia, tiredness, dizziness, sinus trouble, allergies, very common. The lower part of the neck, you see thyroid issues, thyroid conditions. And again, this is going to alter your body's ability to clean itself, to cleanse itself, to detoxify, to function properly, your energy, your vitality. So much of this, as far as normal hormonal function, normal body chemistry, depends on the normal functioning of the nerves, which are protected by the bones. And if the bones shift out of alignment, nothing works right. These nerves in the bottom part of your mid-back go to your spleen, lowers your resistance, increases your risk of colds, flus, COVID, cancer, your kidneys, your colon. There's so many areas that have to do with everyday normal health, vitality, function that can be affected by subluxation. And the picture on the left shows you what happens when a vertebrae shifts out of alignments. It interferes with that normal nerve supply. And that normal nerve supply is carrying communication from the brain out to all of these organs to make sure that they're working right. And if those bones are out interfering with communication, you develop problems. Now, the problem is that you don't normally feel the pressure on the nerves because most of those nerves are not pain sensitive. Most of those nerves are for function and carrying out healing at the level of these organs. So it's kind of like a cavity over time. In the beginning stages, you do not feel it. And as time goes on, as the years go on, it gets worse and worse and worse. And there's damage at a cellular level. It starts to build up and you have inflammation and you have degeneration. And that's when most people go to the chiropractor. It should be sooner than later. But how important is that? So how do we detect subluxation? Obviously, we do ongoing testing. And as a patient in our office, you know that you had your initial scan and x-rays, and you will have follow-up scans and x-rays because, as I said before, we don't guess, we test. And we want you to feel better, but more important than feeling better and correcting the problem is maintaining it. So once we get this fixed, the most important thing is maintaining it, because how long do you want to stay healthy for? Obviously, the rest of your life. So hopefully this program that we did today for you was helpful, and I enjoyed it. I just I wanted to share with you. I guess it turned out to be a little bit longer than I expected. Maybe I was having a little too much fun. There's always so much to share and so little time. But I do appreciate you for joining me today. And please, if you have any questions about how we can further assist you with this, stop and ask Deborah at the front desk. She can tell you how to get that testing done. You can click the link below as far as scheduling an appointment directly with her, or simply call our office. And also think about friends, family members, loved ones, anybody that you think needs to hear this. Just share the link, just forward the video, be a blessing. All right, so thanks again for joining me today. I love and appreciate you. God bless.